Hi, I'm David Weegenaar. Welcome to my chess channel. As you can see, there's no chessboard in front of us. There's no chess pieces either. You can set them up at your home or wherever you are, but I'm actually giving you a wee exercise that is very good for your chess. Doesn't matter who you are, this is going to be very good for your chess if you can try and attempt it. Now, some people will just say, no, I can't be bothered, I'm not going to do it, you know. So I've got a score of a game that I played with a strong opponent from Otago Chess Club way back in 1983. It's a short game, but what we're going to do is I've got the score in front of me, but I'm just going to tell you the moves. And it's best that you try not to do it with a chessboard in front of you, as I'm going to try to do as well at the same time. So here we go. I'm black, but that's got really nothing to do with it, and my opponent is white. So here we go. So first of all, try to do this as far as you can, and as you try and do it longer and longer and greater amount of moves. This is up to just 20 moves. So you would like to try out with your friend also, to do this with them as well, to play a game of chess without the chessboard in front of you. Now, this very same player that I'm playing, I will not drop his name, and it is a he. I will not drop his name, but we used to do this on the bus from Dunedin to Christchurch for a tournament, or on the train, or whatever we were doing. So this is what we used to do ourselves, which I've just noticed. So I think that's quite cool, because I remember playing quite a few games with this person. Very strong chess player, and a wonderful person. So the first move that he played was either pawn to king 4 or e4, depending on what you're accustomed to. But as from here, I'm going to stick to algebraic notation. So we've first got white plays e4, and then I responded as black with e5. So now we've got two pawns, both parallel or whatever, adjacent to each other or at fixed points together. The pawn to king 4 for white, and the pawn to king 4 for black. Then the next move for white was, back then in 1983, I know, of course, is knight to f3, which is attacking my pawn on e5. Now, if you can do this in your head, you are definitely using your brain to its capability, because frankly our brains are greater than we give them credit for. It's not our hands that play chess or our eyes, they're only the instruments of the brain. Our brain is what plays chess at the end of the day. So we've got knight f3, so my move was knight c6. My second move was knight c6. My opponent back then played, this was round 5 of A grade, played bishop to b5. So here we have the Spanish. Okay, so we've got e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. So there's a few moves here that black can play. There is the popular Berlin, played by the world champions and that of our time now, which is knight f6, dreaded Berlin defense they call it. But here I played another move which is out of the Batsford Guide to Chess Openings, which is also well known by reasonably good chess players, even if I may count myself in there, is knight g e7. So have you got the picture of the board in your mind? If you have, well done thus far. So we've got e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight g e7, knight not knight ce7. Then the following we've got, his next move was pawn to c3 or pawn to queen's bishop 3, whichever you prefer. So we've now got, if I look in my mind's eye, I can see the position in my head, and I believe that you will be able to do likewise. My response was pawn to a6 or pawn to queen rook 3 or a6, and with that my opponent played bishop to c4. Now all of a sudden I have to really look out for moves like knight g5, threatening my f pawn on f7, because it's only defended once by the king. So my response to bishop c4 was knight g6. Now if you appreciate, the knight cannot be taken by the bishop on c6 anymore, because the bishop's moved off that diagonal from the a4 to e8 diagonal to the a2 to g8 diagonal. But at the same time as playing knight g6 on move 5, I'm defending if my opponent wants to play knight g5 because of what? Can you see what happens if my opponent plays now 6 knight g5? And so the answer is, and well done if you saw it, is queen takes the knight on g5. So that's very well done if you've done that. And if my juniors are watching this, well done if you've seen this. I'm really impressed with you guys and girls, because I've got boys and girls on my Canterbury Junior Chess team. Okay, so we've got knight g6 on move 5 for black. Then my opponent plays d4. Now this is really just threatening to go knight g5, frankly, because now, if you note, the pawn on d4 move thrust is going to defend a knight to g5 move, because the bishop on c1 is now operating on that diagonal from c1 to h6. So I have to watch out for this threat. I play bishop to e7 or bishop to king 2, which is now defending the square on g5 twice, and my opponent is attacking the pawn on e5 of mine twice with a knight on f3 and a pawn on d4. So please bear with me, because this is very good for your chess. I cannot give you anything better than this, because you're using your brain, preferably, than trying to do this over the board, which is okay too. But try to do this as far as you can, because this will help you. This is not done on the internet. What I'm doing here is not done on the internet. I want to actually note that down. Not done on net, as far as I'm aware. So I'm cheating a wee bit, but you don't need to. So bishop e7 on move 6, I believe, is now defending knight g5, because if knight g5, if my opponent plays knight g5 here now, I play bishop takes knight on g5, and then if the bishop takes the bishop on g5, I merely just go queen takes g5 and I win a piece. So now my opponent castled. Now, as I previously mentioned, my opponent could play de5, sorry, and knight ge5 or knight ce5 would be my response. And I recall that we played quite a few games lightning chess, because I'm talking about the top player of my time, a little bit older than me. We used to play a lot of these, and he would play f4 after taking on e5 with his pawn and knight. He would then play f4, but if he does this, what can happen? So this is a wee exercise for you. If you can see this, very, very well done. So we've got de5. If we have de5, I'm using the if word here, a word that isn't understood by everybody. The if word has been used here. So if de5, I go knight ce5 possibly. Now then knight takes the knight on e5. From the knight on f3 takes the knight on e5. Then I play knight takes knight on e5. And this will be very, very good for your analysis as well. Okay, so then I play knight ge5 because there's only one knight left of mine, because my opponent's just taken my other knight on c6. So then I go knight e5. What now? You say if f4, what does black play? And if you see this, well done. I merely capture the knight on c4 by playing knight e5 takes c4, and I'm a piece to the good. Okay, so that would not do. So the next part, so we're now at e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, knight ge7, c3, a6, bishop c4, knight g6 to prevent knight g5, d4, and bishop e7. So we're at that stage now. Well done. I clap my hands for you if you can see this in your mind. Next move for white on move 7, which is the date today, the 7th of April 2018, is castles. Short, naught, naught. Naught, naught, or OO, whatever you want to call it. O-O or naught, naught. It's naught, naught, of course. So we've got castles. Now I have, as move 7 for black, d6. So I've now supported my pawn on e5 with a pawn on d6. And if there's a pawn capture by white on e5, I merely just take with the pawn back. And if queen takes queen on d8, I can take back with the bishop on d8. Okay, so I can take the queen of check on d8, taking my queen with bishop d8. And this is also very good for my chess too, doing this. The next, but white plays de5, okay, sorry. White now plays d takes e5. The pawn takes pawn on e5. And now I play knight ge5. And my opponent plays knight takes the knight on e5 as white takes the knight on e5. And here I play knight e5 capturing back, which is now defended by the d pawn on d6 and attacking the bishop on white's c4. The bishop on c4 is now attacked. But can my opponent actually play f4 here? Yes is the answer, because if I go knight takes c4, my opponent then can, I believe, my opponent then can play queen a4 check. If you can see this, good. That's what some of my juniors go, like that. Queen a4 check, bishop d7, and the strongest player in Canterbury can do this sort of thing with his eyes closed. And so bishop d7, and then white would be able to play queen c4, capturing the knight back, and it's another game of chess, that's just a trade-off for the knight and bishop. So we've got knight e5, knight ge5, after d5, knight ge5, knight e5, knight e5, hitting the bishop. My opponent merely went bishop b3. So now my opponent has got a castled king with no pawns in front of the king moved, the 3 pawns. The pawn is on e4. He has a half open d file. I have a half open e file. The bishop has gone back to c4 to b3, and I probably have to watch out for moves like f4 and all that, not that I'm going to stop them. So I now castle, and yes, sure enough, my opponent now plays f4. Now where do I put my knight? My knight is attacked on e5, and if I don't watch it, my opponent's just going to go fe5, frankly, and win a piece. So I move my knight to g4. Getting complicated. So I'm actually threatening what? So I'm moving my knight to g4. And my opponent plays h3. And here I move my knight back to f6 because it's got a station there, and it prevents the f4 pawn going to f6, if you get what I mean. So I've got a pawn on d6, so e5 is a possibility. It might have happened, I'm not sure. Now my opponent plays queen f3. Now it starts to get a wee bit furry here in one's mind. But there's a pawn on h3 from white, so cannot go bishop g4 because merely hg4 happens, and the queen's defending the pawn on g4, that they capture my bishop on g4. So what I do here now is I play after queen f3, which took my opponent 50 minutes to play this amount of moves. We're up to move 13. I play bishop d7, and I've taken 43 minutes. I play bishop d7, so that if e5, I've got trouble, haven't I? Because my opponent is, if I play de5, fe5, I have to watch out for, I'm going to lose my knight on f6, because if I move it, queen f7 check is possible, because there's a queen and a bishop and a rook all bearing down on my f7 square after e5 happens. So I played bishop d7, c4 happens, so that's stopping the bishop on b3 from effectively attacking f7. And so if e5 happened, I was going to play bishop f3. I mean bishops to c6. And if queen f2, the only move, then I play knight e4. If you can see this, so then I would play knight e4. And really it's trial and error. The whole thing is trial and error. And I then would be able to think about playing moves like de5 and bishop c5 check, etc. But I'm not sure if I would, because I'm opening up my my king's position, but I would be able to castle. But black would also be able to be met by, after knight e4, bishop e4, and that wouldn't really worry black, because after bishop takes e4, bishop e4, White's got a pawn on e5 and a pawn on f4, and I've got the white squared bishop. And if something like there's no threat to f7 because the pawn is on f4 still, so if e d6, I can just merely play bishop d6 or queen d6, and there's no real problem in my position. But the queen is on f2, and so from white, so I'll be able to do that. So that's just analysis, by the way, that I've done here. Now, if it's too much now, you could stop it, but it's very, very good for your chess. So we have got basically e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and this is how you remember it too, is you just play the moves over again if you forget the position of the pieces on the board. So we've got e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e5, knight g e7, c3, g6, or a6. I was going to go, oops, I've got to start this all over again. a6, you don't want that. a6, bishop c4, knight g6, d4, bishop e7. If d5 here for white, then you can either go knight to b8, which is kind of a Breyer move, or you can go knight c e7 and be ready to play d6 and that sort of thing. And it can get a little bit bothersome. That sort of thing could be a wee bit of an issue. So we're up to bishop c4, knight g6, d4, bishop e7, castles, d6, de5, knight g e5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop b3 because it's hit on c4, castles, f4, knight g4, h3, knight f6, queen f3, bishop d7, c4, bishop c6. Now e5 is now no longer possible. Why? From white's hand. Why is e5 not a good move? And good if you've seen the answer. Black would be able to take the bishop, would be able to take the queen on f3 with bishop f3 from c6. Then we have bishop c2. Okay, bishop c2, which is, I didn't actually realise, but I'm actually attacking the white pawn on e4 with my bishop and knight. And I thought that the bishop was still on, was actually on the c2 file now, but it's, or diagonal, it's on the b3. So the bishop drops back to c2 to aid the defense of the e4 pawn, attacked twice by my bishop on c6 and knight on f6 respectively, and only defended by the queen on f3. So my opponent plays bishop c2. Now I do a wee bit of ganging up here with rook e8. Okay, so I'm now kind of just being a bit of a pain because I'm threatening rook. I've played rook e8. And I wrote better is b5. So why is b5 better? It hits the pawn on c4 from white, but why is b5 better? And being a Saturday, I like to be a bit longer on Saturdays. So at the moment, this is probably quite a period. So b5 I wrote is better, and maybe it is, I'm not sure. But then, so we've got bishop c6, bishop c2, rook e8. Now my opponent plays knight c3. So this is defending the pawn on e4 3 times, and also I can't play moves like d5 because white just plays cd5, or, pardon me, ed5. I can't do an outtake for if I have a little bit of a burp. So anyway, my opponent plays knight c3. So my opponent, he's defending his pawn on e4 3 times, and I'm effectively trying to attack it 3 times with my rook and knight and bishop. Okay, so knight c3, I went bishop f8. So if any of those pieces retreat from defending the pawn on e4 now, I can just about capture it because I've got 3 attacking it. The bishop and the knight and the rook on e8. So if the knight moves away lamely to knight e2, I can just go probably bishop e4 or knight e4, and then I would be threatening knight to d2 because the queen is defending, is attacked by my bishops defended on b7 on c6, and so the knight and bishop would simultaneously be attacking the queen on f3, but also the rook on f1. Now if you can do this, fantastic. So then we've got, if that was the case, black had been met by knight c3 to d2. We've got knight d2. Then what could white play? I'm not even sure if white can. Can white? No, they can't. Play queen h5, threatening checkmate on h7. No. Why? Because I play, I believe, knight takes queen on h5 with my knight on f6. So if you can do all this, fantastic. So I would win at least an exchange from that encounter with if white went wrong here, which white isn't going to do that. They're a top A grade player. As I said, a little bit older than me, but I cannot drop names. So then we've got bishop f8, bishop d2. So the structure is there's a half open d file for white and a bishop on d2 and queen on f3, knight on c3, pawn on c4, bishop on c2, rook on f1 and a pawn on f4 and e4, bishop d2. So we're not far from the end. I now play b5. And my opponent plays cb5, ab5, and knight d5, knight d5, and I play knight d7, and my opponent plays bishop c3, and then offers me a draw, and I set. So if you've done that, well done. I'm very, very impressed. If you can do that in your head, or even if you can do a wee bit of it in your head, even though it is algebraic notation, if you can do even just a little bit of that in your head, then well done, all good to you, all well, good to you, all that sort of thing. So these are what improve your chess mind so that you end up doing it in your sleep. Okay, so that's the end of my session. I will speak of looking at one's weaknesses, which is a very important thing in chess. That's not my idea only, of course, because it's well understood to look at one's weaknesses. But all I'm going to say is I'm going to cap it off and finish this session, which I hope you have enjoyed. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button so I know that you like it. This is the best thing for your chess. It is not done anywhere else. So we're talking now to end this session about weaknesses. Now, I have put my weaknesses on a plate and looked at them, even though they're a little bit scary to look at. I know my weaknesses in chess, and because I've looked at my weaknesses in chess, my chess has got better according to my opponents and friends in chess. They have said my chess has improved at this late age. So that is because of this sort of thing as well, what I'm doing here. But if you look at your weaknesses, even though we don't really want to acknowledge them, we all have weaknesses, doesn't matter who you are. And so if you start to look at your weaknesses and put them on the timeout mat, so to speak, and sort of like be a little bit punitive towards yourself, and get on your case about it. So it's like if you speed in your car, okay, you cannot blame the car, you cannot blame the person in front of you, you cannot blame the person behind you, you cannot blame the person beside you in the passenger seat, even though you can try, or you cannot blame the police officer for being there. You can only blame yourself. So that's very, very true in chess. I often get caught up in blaming my opponent. My opponent is a computer, you're cheating, blah, 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 etc., etc. And it's a little bit more emotive than that stated. So this is the end of my lecture. Look at your weaknesses, or ask your friends, if they want to tell you, what do you consider my weaknesses to be? And seek out your weaknesses and work on them, and try to realize what they are, and try to avoid making silly mistakes in chess, because we're all prone to it. That's why computers are different from human players. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, and I hope this exercise is well liked and well received out there in the chess community. That's David Weegenaar over and out. Finish with the New Zealand flag, as I call it, but it's the New Zealand All Blacks fan flag. Thank you. Bye for now. I really enjoyed this session.